Are you tired of feeling overlooked and underestimated? Hi, I'm Tammy North, the Introverted Executives Coach. If you're an introverted executive or you're ready to rise to senior leadership, but you're struggling to be seen as a high potential, this podcast is for you. Do you ever marvel how it seems like some people never forget about anything that they tasked, or how some people seem highly focused and responsive in spite of how busy they must be? Email can be a huge time sink for busy professionals, and if you're on your way to the C-suite, this is one thing you can and should master now before you get there. If you listen to this podcast all the time, this one's going to be a little bit different. This is more of a just do it and get it under control kind of episode. If you're subscribed to my weekly newsletter, which is curated especially for introverted executives, then you know that I sent a poll out back in January asking for topics that you wanted me to talk about in the future. There's a link in my show notes if you want to subscribe to the Rise and Shine newsletter. But in that poll, email management was surprisingly the number one requested response. What that told me is that in spite of all the other ways that are available to communicate, email is alive and well. And if you don't manage it properly, it can quickly get out of control and become pretty overwhelming. The good news is there's a lot of things you can do to reduce it, automate it, manage it, and focus it so that you stay on top of things and never miss anything important. Before we really get into the heart of it, I just want to say that email is not the work. Email is communication about work. And basically, I think you should look at email like it's a task list, a list of potential tasks, I should say, but it is not the work. There are many people who simply wait and respond to emails all day. And I suppose that if your job is a help desk or if you're monitoring the contact us service, that you might be required to have fast email response time. And granted, I know that there are some job descriptions where a fast email response time is definitely a requirement. But I believe for a large portion of people, and especially leaders and people who are growing in toward the executive ranks, that is not the case. It is easy to spend your entire day responding to email. Essentially, as one new email pops in your box, you could just begin responding to it as if it were now your number one priority. The problem with that is you likely do have something else that is actually your number one priority for the day, and responding to every single email the second it arrives is just going to use up all of your time, and you won't get your real priority accomplished. So I have some solutions for you in this episode that'll help you manage and focus your email and your responses. So let's jump in. First, let's talk about how to reduce your email. The amount of email that comes in every day is unbelievable. So one way to manage it is to reduce the amount of email you get and also the amount of email you generate for other people. This is definitely a two-way street. If your company allows for communication via applications such as Slack or internal chat, then consider using those options for super quick communication needs. Your colleagues will thank you if they don't have to open a bunch of emails just to see a one-line note that could have been a chat. This episode is not about Slack, so I'm not going to go into a long conversation about Slack, but I could go on and on about how well it facilitates team coordination. My 9-to-5 job doesn't allow for Slack communication due to classification issues, but with many other organizations and teams I'm involved with across the rest of my life, we use it prolifically. At my 9-to-5, we are able to use Microsoft Teams chat, which is pretty useful. I prefer Slack over Microsoft Teams because it's so clean and simple. You can create channels for specific efforts or topics. You can have group conversations, tag people, share files, links, and keywords. And you can do a lot of that same stuff in Microsoft Teams as well. So they're both useful. And there are definitely other applications. Those aren't the only two. I'm just highlighting those two because I have a lot of familiarity with them. If you are allowed to use Slack or have opportunities such as some of these chat functions, I do urge you to use those for one-line conversations, vice email. It is time to move into the future. Okay, let's talk about a concept called email bankruptcy. One of my favorite productivity experts, Michael Hyatt, who's the designer of my favorite productivity system, the Full Focus Planner. I have an affiliate link for that. I'll throw it in the show notes if you're interested in checking it out. Anyway, in one of the discussions that Michael Hyatt had on the topic of email, he talked about a time that you could get to where you might just want to declare email bankruptcy. So an example of this might be if you have never had any type of email management practice, and so you have thousands of unread emails, or maybe if you've been on a long hiatus, maybe you've been out of the office for 6 weeks for some reason, and you come back and you have thousands of unread emails. Honestly, it's unrealistic and probably not useful for you to actually go back and read them all. it could take a month of your time just to process them. And that time could be spent creating something wonderful in the world, not just reading email. In email bankruptcy, you literally just select all your unread email and delete it or file it. That's it. And then when you make that decision, you essentially believe that if it's important, somebody's going to send it again. So that's basically what Michael Hyatt really did say. I think it was in a podcast I was listening to. Here's how I would actually declare email bankruptcy if I were you, just to make sure you don't miss that one thing, that one person that you've been waiting to contact you for years finally did. And what if you missed that one? So in order to actually declare email bankruptcy, this is what I would do. Create a temporary file in your inbox for old unread email. Then sort your inbox by from and look at anybody you care about, your bosses, more senior leadership, direct reports, friends, family, colleagues, key stakeholders, whatever, and kind of do some sorting by that and flag anything that you want to read or process from any of those very important people to you. And then second, sort your inbox by the subject and flag any of the subjects that you definitely want to process. And then sort by the file size with the largest file size on top. Because one thing I've noticed is often people send attachments or other files that you might want to save for your records. If you find any of those, flag those for processing. Then sort by the date. Anything that is more than 30 days old and is not already flagged, just move that to the old unread file. Then scroll through the unflagged items that are less than 30 days old and flag anything else that you know you want to process and respond to. And then finally, sort by flagged items and move anything at that point that is still unflagged to the old unread email folder. At that point, only flagged items should still be in your inbox, so go ahead and process those items. I'll give you some more helpful tips in processing your email a little bit later in this episode. And regarding that old unread email folder, save it for some period of time, 2 weeks, 30 days, something like that. And if nothing pops up, which is very unlikely that it would, go ahead and delete it or archive it. Okay, let's talk about automation. At this point in 2022, I believe every good email program will allow for some processing via rules. These rule sets can help you reduce or categorize your email. For example, Gmail now has tabs that include promotional and social media emails, and so that allows you to have a primary inbox that has a lot less distractions. In most of the email applications, you can also use rule sets to filter out things such as something you're CC'd on, that, anything you're not expected to take immediate action on because you're not in the to line. Then you will only see the things that you are in the to line for in your inbox because everything else will have already been filed to a separate folder. You can get more creative with the rule sets, but I do want to caution you that unless you have an established routine to review items that you have processed via rule sets to other folders, you could forget to look at them and miss something where you should have been on the to line. Okay, now let's get down to actually managing your email. It is possible to manage your email more effectively and reduce the amount of time you spend dealing with it. If you do have an executive assistant, they can definitely help you with this. But if you don't have an executive assistant yet, no matter how busy you are, these tips will definitely help you. I recommend creating routines that include checking your email at specific times of the day. This will help you stay focused and avoid getting overwhelmed. I have a start work routine and an end of work routine, and I fully process all my email at those times, no matter what. And I also usually spend about 5 to 10 minutes when I come back to my office after I've been out for an hour or more, like at a meeting or something. This gives me 3 to 5 times a day where I have focused email processing time. Okay, let's talk about folders. A lot of people I know have a complex email folder setup. This is for emails they want to keep for future reference. First, I just want to say it is 2022 and this is a huge time killer. I think it might have been necessary to do that back in the 1990s before search functions became so robust. But now, given how powerful these search functions are, it is simply a time killer. I have one file titled processed, and any email that I'm 100% finished with, but I might want to look at in the future, goes into processed. Then when I want to pull an email, I go to that processed file and type the keyword and the email appears. As you know, I work at the executive level for the U.S. Navy now, and I know people who have a folder for every single ship, plus a folder for key stakeholders, plus a folder for things like training, equipment, manpower, and budget. You get the picture. The thing is that if an email comes in and it's talking about 3 different ships that have training issues or equipment issues, where do you file it? How will you find it later? That's the point of having just a processed file to put all of that in. And one of the best things you can do for your colleagues and readers of the emails that you write is to create useful subject lines. Okay, if you're washing the dishes or daydreaming, let me say that again. Please create useful subject lines. I had one colleague in the past who had a habit of replying to an email about one topic and then asking a question about a completely different, unrelated topic. And sometimes he would reply to people who were on the first email, but not directly responsible for the first topic. And then he would get very annoyed when nobody responded to the email about the new topic. But it's simple. You'll do everybody, including yourself, a favor if you treat this subject like a headline. If you want somebody to respond to your email, you need to make the email subject line very clear. And often, if I am tasking somebody, I will literally put task, and then I will put the subject line, or I will put response required, Make it clear. Tell them what they need to do. So the second they see the email, they're like, oh, I better pay attention to this, or I need to do something about this. Or you could even put info only. That way they know, oh, I can read that later. If you do change topics on an email string, just create a brand new email, or at the very least, change the subject line. It's common sense. Okay, another way to process your email fast is to only open emails that require a response. Not all emails require a response, and trying to answer every single email can be a time killer, counterproductive. Try to only open emails that do require a response and delete or archive the others. This will help you stay focused and get more done. Most email programs let you see the first couple of lines before you take the action to open an email. And there are many emails that you can just select and delete or select and archive. If you see the first couple lines, it'll say something like, thank you, or got it. Anybody who just responds to basically acknowledge that they received your email, you don't even need to open those. Just file that. Not all messages are created equal, so you should respond quickly to the ones that only take a few minutes and then delegate or defer the less important ones. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but try to prioritize urgent messages and delegate the less important ones. This will help you stay on top of the most important emails and avoid getting bogged down in the minutia. I'm going to give you 2 different methods to do this a little bit later, created by 2 different productivity experts. They have some things in common, but they are both a little bit different depending on what you're interested in. One thing I do is use templates for common responses, and I think that this is an underutilized method of speeding up your email. If you find that you are often sending a very similar or same type of response over and over and over, consider using an email template. This will help you save time and help you stay consistent in your communication. You can create a file of templates in Word or in Google Docs, but one of my favorite tricks is to put these types of responses in an email signature. At my 9-to-5, we use the enterprise version of Outlook. There are some things that people ask me all the time, such as, what do I need to do to submit a visit request? Or what are the directions to get to your building? I have an email signature titled Visit Request and Directions, and all I have to do is select that and it drops right into my email, and it becomes a 5-second response that would have taken me 5 minutes or more if I had to recreate it each time. Depending on your position and the type of work you do, you could have 10 to 20 of these types of common responses. Some of them require some personalization, but you can still have a template with blanks that you personalize with the specific information has required. This is a good use of an hour of deep work time. Just brainstorm some templates and create a few of them. It's a game changer. You could also work with your entire team and create templates together and share them with each other. That's when you supercharge the entire team's productivity. One thing to drive productivity is turn off email notifications. Just turn them off. If you have a solid routine to check your email, then the notifications will just keep you from focusing during your deep work time. Email is kind of like Facebook. You keep getting the hits like a drug, but don't worry. If you turn off the notifications, you won't forget to check. I definitely recommend you use some type of task manager to keep track of important tasks that need to be completed. Task managers can be a great way to keep track of important tasks that need to be completed and followed up on. If you find yourself constantly forgetting about things, try using this in order to get organized. I will talk about that a little bit more when I talk about the 2 different methods to process email in a minute. At the very minimum, in both Google and Outlook and probably other email programs as well, often you can just turn that existing email into a task, or you can at least flag it and create a reminder for later. So either way, do something, but you have to create ways to remind yourself that you need to complete this task. Okay, so let's talk about these 2 different philosophies for managing email. One of them is the Getting Things Done method by David Allen. And the way he recommends that you process emails, or really in David Allen's case, this is how he recommends that you process any task that's incoming. And he just looks at email as another possible incoming task. So when an email comes in, ask yourself, is this actionable? Do I need to do anything with it? Yes or no? If no, either delete it or archive it. If yes, will it take less than 2 minutes to respond to? If so, just respond immediately. Will it take longer than 2 minutes? Then decide you're going to delegate it or defer it. And if you decide to defer it, either immediately schedule time on your calendar to do it. And by this, I literally mean decide when you're going to do that email and literally go put it on your calendar, or add it to a task list so that you can prioritize when you're going to accomplish it later. And if you do delegate it, David Allen recommends that you put it in a waiting on folder so that you can go check on things you're waiting on periodically and then figure out what the status is. Okay, and then the second method I want to talk about is the stack method for email management. This is created by the Double Gemini company. You can go to doublegemini.com, and I'll also put a link in the show notes where they have free videos you can go watch to learn about this. I think the stack method is amazing, and I've tried to employ it in the past to mixed success, but the reason is it's sort of like exercise or eating well, that it's one of those things you have to make into a habit, but if you do, it is mind-blowingly awesome. In 2022, I made a goal to re-implement the stack method, and I've done so again. And the stack method is one of the only ways I've ever discovered to actually get yourself to inbox zero and keep yourself at inbox zero without making it a full-time job. I'm going to give you the very simple high-level version, but there are, I think, 10 videos you can go watch that are free that'll go pretty in depth. And then you can also take a class on it if you're that geeky, which is awesome. But if anybody does that or has in the past, I would love to know about it. If you just implement it in a simple, high-level way, it is still mind-blowingly awesome. It's so simple and yet genius. This is my opinion. Okay, in the stack method, you create folders. You can create between 5 and 7. I'm going to recommend 7. And if you watch his very first video on the link I'm going to share, he'll give you the basic 5, but I'm going to go all the way to 7 because if you watch all of his videos, that's what he will end up recommending. So here are the folders you create. You have your inbox, but then under your inbox, you create a reply, a do, a meet, a remind, a forward, a review, and a win folder. So there's 7 folders. After you create those 7 folders, then basically you come to your inbox, and when you start processing it, this is what you do. For anything that is very fast to reply to, like it'll take you 5 minutes or less, you immediately drag it to your reply folder. Anything that's going to take you more than 5 minutes, you drag to your do folder. And he actually recommends you call the do folder do 5+. That way you remember anything that's going to take you more than 5 minutes, you put in the do folder. And if it's going to take you 15 minutes or more, at the same time you drag it into your do folder, you also open up your calendar and schedule time on the calendar of when you are literally going to spend the time to reply to that email or to do the work that's required. Then there's the meet folder. If you need to schedule a time to meet with people based on this email, then you drag that into the meet folder. If you have an executive assistant, that's a folder that your EA can work with in order to set up times to meet with people, to organize different invitations, virtual events, Zoom calls, meetings, in-person meetings, whatever. Those kind of things that are going to take that kind of coordination get pulled into the meet folder. Then there's a remind folder. When you send out a tasking email or an email where you delegate something, then his trick is to blind copy yourself on the email. So it'll come back to your inbox. Yes, you could do this with your sent files too, but this will keep you in one folder and not require folder switching back between the inbox and the sent files. So you BCC yourself when you task somebody, and then you drag that BCC into a remind folder so that if you open that remind folder, that should be all the things that you've tasked out, that you have asked somebody else to either do or that you've delegated something specifically. Then anything that you want to forward to people, you can either immediately forward, but you can drag it into the forward file, and that would be anything that you're going to forward. And then anything that you're CC'd on, but you want to read later, so it's not your responsibility to do anything really, but you just want to read it, then drag those types of emails to the review file. And you can also create a rule to automatically take anything that you're not on the to line to put it into the review file. And then you can process that later. And then the final file is a win file. And this would be things that if you specifically know, there's some things that aren't easily searchable in a large processing file. If I just made one large processed file, which I do have, but there's some things that you know, like your 2021 taxes or your 2022 taxes. There are some emails that don't have the word taxes in them, but you know that, I'm going to want to be able to quickly find that when it comes time to do my taxes. Then you might put it in a win file. and then specifically file those types of emails in like a when. When will you need this? I'm going to need this when I do my 2022 taxes. And you probably won't have very many of those when files, but there are some things, or maybe travel, when I'm doing my travel claim. So then now you have everything out of your inbox. After you do all that right there, you should have nothing in your inbox. Then your responsibility to go to the files, and you do them in order, starting with reply. Number 1, reply. Things that you need to reply to fast. You go to reply, you go down the things you need to reply to, you reply to them, then you move all of the emails there that you've replied to into the processed file, and you're done. Then you go to the do 5+ file, and anything there, if you had it scheduled on your calendar, then you can mark it a different color, maybe categorize it with a different color. But anything that you need to do that is less than 15 minutes, spend some time to knock those out. And you can actually schedule time on your calendar that is literally just focus on the do 5+ file. And you could just spend time in there knocking out some of the faster do items. And then the items that are going to take longer, when they come up on your calendar at the time you schedule them, commit that you're going to work on them then. And then you go to your meet file and you schedule any of the time to meet with the people, or your EA can help you with that. And then go to the remind file and verify if there's anything you want to follow up on, or if anything is complete, then pull that email over to the processed file, and so on. And the forward and the review are more just the forward, go ahead and forward the things you meant to forward, and review has you read the things you wanted to read or process the things you wanted to process, then just pull those things over to the process file. And that's basically it. So the stack method is awesome, but it is like exercise. So I highly recommend that you create really strong routines that clearly remind you to do those things. Otherwise, it's possible that you'll process things from your inbox into those files, and then you won't still take the action if you don't remind yourself to go back to those files. And then once you have everything processed for the rest of the day, anytime you check your email, you just take action from your inbox. And then basically you just do this stacking method in either in the morning or in the evening. So that's it. Okay, so then how do you actually get things done? This is the focus part. And I already talked about it a little bit in the stack method, but even if you're not doing the stack method, that there's anything you really want to get done, especially if it's in your email and you don't want to forget about it, then literally schedule time in your calendar and then turn off the email notifications when that time comes and honor your commitment to yourself. This part takes discipline, and it's always a work in progress for many people, including me, but it's kind of like eating well or exercising. The more you do it, the easier it gets and the better you get at it. This is one area where an executive coach can really help you improve your productivity and your focus. We have all sorts of tips and tricks and methods to help you with that. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff today, and so I'm really excited for you to start off your week all refreshed. Don't try to do everything in this episode at once, but definitely save this episode and start putting some of it into practice. I'm going to add some key resources that I've mentioned in the show notes, and I'm also going to put it in my weekly newsletter this week. So in case you're driving and you can't take notes, don't worry, it's there. Nobody's perfect. That's what I want you to remember. You don't have to be perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. When you fall off, just decide you're going to refocus and start again. Getting your inbox in control is a good habit goal to set. One thing you can do, like I did for 2022, is just create a goal that you're going to keep your inbox processed, and then every day that you process it the way you made a plan to process it, every day you stick to your plan, just check off your box in your habit tracker. And then the more you do it, the better you'll feel. When you do use the methods that I talked about in this episode, you really can stay at inbox zero. And although I'm the first person to maintain that it is not the actual goal to get to inbox zero, that the actual purpose of this episode is just so that you can efficiently process your inbox, so that you make sure that you don't miss anything important, and so that you respond to things that you truly want to respond to, then you're going to come across like you have it all together, and you're going to follow up like a queen. So let me know how it goes as you try some of these things in the next week. You've got this. Now go manage your email like the boss you are. You can connect with me at Introverted Executive on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're ready for executive coaching to help you achieve your biggest career goals, subscribe to my weekly Rise and Shine newsletter. There, you'll find out when my program opens for new clients, and you'll also receive weekly tips and activities to continue to make a bigger impact in your own powerful way. You'll find all the information and links down in the show notes. See you next week.